so here we are in After Effects. So we're gonna start by saying that we want to run the script file first and foremost. And my script file is this sci-fi landscape version 2 that I just exported with Houdini 2 AE. I'm just gonna click run, and what that's gonna do is actually it's gonna create a composition for us. And if I double click this composition, we will see that we have our camera already in, and we also have like our resolution. Everything's kind of set up for us, basically. As I said, we don't really have any motion. I mean, right now we have like 240 frames, but we only need one. I mean, technically I could have done this in Photoshop, but for some of the stuff that I want to do and that I want to show you guys, I think After Effects is going to give me much more flexibility to do what I want to do. So, okay, having said that, I'm going to bring in my EXR export that I did. Okay, so here's the EXR, and the first thing I want to do is I want to go into Interpret Footage under Main, and I just want to tell After Effects that I want to interpret as linear light, not just for 32 bits EXRs, but for everything. So that's just going to basically kind of interpret my EXR correctly. And the only other thing I want to do is right here, I want to click on this little rocket looking dude, and under color I want to linearize the workspace. I guess I have that already set up, so I mean we should be good to go. And this is going to ensure that we have you know, we're working in the right color space and we have access to all of the information, and we're not like throwing away any detail or any bit depth, I guess, or any information from our image. So having said that, I'm just going to drag this guy in here, and here we go. So what I'm going to do is actually, I've been using this, I have this kind of set of stock photos of just skies, but basically there's this guy that I've been basically using just to give me a background as I render, like in 3D light, so just have like some sort of reference. But I'm kind of liking the fact that it starts out very orangey and then it kind of gets into the cyan range. What I don't like is the purple right here, and I don't like that there's these clouds that are obviously very, very different than the clouds that we have in our image. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to bring in another one that I think is at least in the general range, which is this guy right here. This is similar, and I don't know, like I'm just going to bring it into After Effects just to have it. But we're going to start with the first one. So I'm just going to put this somewhere behind our EXR, and it's too small, but it's no big deal. I'll just resize it. I don't think I'm too worried about the resolution at this point. And I'm just going to hit P, and I'm just going to slide it up. Now, if I slide it too far, we start seeing that there's actually an ocean or a sea. This is not good for us. So I want to kind of make sure that this line right here is effectively below you know, the horizon on our image. So I'm just gonna lower this until I don't really see it anymore, like somewhere around here. So as I said, this is kind of nice, but I definitely don't like the purpley stuff here. I don't like these upper clouds. I'm not even sure if I really like these guys. I could probably live with these guys, but I don't know. Like I haven't figured it out yet. So just for shits and giggles, I guess I tend to say that a lot, let's bring in the other guy and see what that feels like. So I'm just going to scale it up, and once again I'm going to slide it upwards. I just want to see what's on the bottom. Yeah, the bottom looks fine. So let's kind of slide it up to here. I mean, this is not bad either, honestly. Let's do this. Let's combine them, because I kind of like the very, very bottom of this guy, and then I'm liking what is happening just a little bit higher up. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a box selection, put it somewhere around here, and also I'm just going to, I don't want to see this guy at all beyond a certain point, so I'm just going to put a mask on this guy too, and this mask I'm gonna set to subtract, because I don't want to see the very top. So basically what I'm doing is, on this guy I'm just retaining the very bottom edge of it, and then on this guy I am just retaining the middle portion of it. Okay, and right now we have a very harsh line, so I probably want to feather this a little bit. Okay, so this is good, and but I don't want to go this high. I want to go maybe up to around this line right here. So let's do that. Just gonna highlight my mask again. I'm just gonna lower it. So basically I don't want to see these clouds at all. I just want to be very selective. So I don't know, maybe something like this, and that's all we have right now, which is not a lot, but it's a start. I basically want a solid, but I want it to have like this type of teal sort of color, so I'm just gonna say use solid, and I'm just gonna assign it this color for now. And right now it's the size of the composition, and obviously it's occluding everything. So what I want to do is actually I'm just going to put it behind our I don't need this guy, or actually I don't need this guy. I'm just going to put it here. So or actually behind this guy, sorry. Alright. The only other thing that I maybe want is like some nice kind of bluish sky to put like at the very top. So I'm going to create a new solid, make it a comp size just like the previous one. However, I'm going to change the color, and this color I'm going to put it towards like kind of like the pale sort of blue. And let's put this even lower, and I'm going to call this upper sky. And what I want to do, or actually maybe let's put it in here. So right now I'm occluding my little teal greenish pale type of portion. I mean, this doesn't look bad, but it's not really what I want. So also let's go to full resolution here. That's why I'm getting like some weirdness here. I just want to mask this upper sky. Let's go basically like this type of contour here. Something like that for now. We can always adjust it. We can always kind of, and of course right now I have like a very harsh, hard line, and I don't really want that. So all I have to do is just type MM twice and pull up my mask and just kind of feather it by a lot. Like I want to feather it by like a really big chunk, because I want it to kind of feel like a very natural sort of blending of these two colors. Yeah, I mean I have, I guess like a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 layers for the sky. And as I said, like I kind of made myself some AOVs so that I could kind of tweak some things in post. I'll show you what I have. So I'm just going to make a duplicate of this, and I'm going to pull up the 3D channel extractor. And what is going to happen is that now I have access to all my individual things. Like for instance, like here's my Z pass that I can kind of tweak, so you can kind of like isolate which portion of my background and foreground. I have my diffuse, so this is just when the light hits the surface directly, and that's all that this information gives me. I have my reflection, And once again, this is nothing but reflection. So this is basically after the rays have hit my surface the first time, when they're bouncing, now I'm getting these this reflection. What else do I have? I have my volume. So this is nothing but my clouds and my, you can see the outline of the building strictly because it's the haze. And then I have my incandescence, and this looks kind of pretty. All of a sudden it looks like a night scene. But incandescence is just the lights in the buildings, and that's it. So maybe let's start with the incandescence, and I'm just going to rename this incandescence. So what I want to do is I want to just change the transfer mode from normal to something like add or screen. I'm just going to go with screen for right now, and that's going to give me my incandescence. And like, you can't see a whole lot of it, but like all it's doing is just kind of strengthening my lights. I'm just going to set this to diffuse, okay? And then I'm going to duplicate this. Let's get rid of this guy. Duplicate this, and I'm going to set this to reflection. So now if I change my reflection mode from normal to either screen or add, then between those two I have the equivalent of this guy. I wish I could kind of A/B them for you guys, but well, I think I can actually. So yeah, I mean, basically that's what we have. The problem, of course, is now we're missing our clouds, so I could do another duplicate and change my extractor channel to volume. And once again, this also would get an add or screen pass. Usually I like to use screen. It feels a little bit more gentle to the image. And then we have our incandescence. So basically these 4 channels should be equivalent to my beauty pass. So okay, cool. Actually, I'm gonna put the incandescence below the volumes. Okay, cool. Okay, let's bring the sky back. Nice. And basically what I can start doing is maybe tweak some of these guys if I really want to. Like, for instance, the incandescence. I could add, let me bring this up. I could add a glow. So let's see here. We need to look at the lights very, very closely to find out what the hell is going on. Let's make the glow. Let me make it like 50% is fine. So this is without the glow, this is with the glow. And actually, let me make it even more sensitive to maybe like 10%, so it's really picking up even the small lights. Let's make this a lot less present, 0.5. Let's make it 0.1. So this is going to be our tight glow. Just kind of adding a little bit of like glow in the instant, in the immediate vicinity of the image, and then I'm just going to duplicate this, and this is glow 2, and let's bring it back to 1. I'm just going to make this a lot larger, so maybe like 50. It's kind of creating a little bit of a sense of haze, like, so that it's kind of adding just a little subtle realism to our scene. The thing I'm not too crazy about is like some of these lights have very, very strong colors, and maybe I want to desaturate them a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a tint, which we're going to find under the color correction tint. This is a good way to make everything black and white, but a value of 100% is just too strong, so let's make it 50. I want to cut down the saturation a little bit, not too much. But you know, because we have this on the individual channel, look, we can turn the lights on and off on all the city. I'm cutting off the power grid. But no, I could just kind of maybe change the opacity a little bit, like maybe 80, maybe even 50. I don't know. I just wanna feel the lights more than I actually want to see them. You know, I wanna kind of have these little specks. There is one thing that I did want to do with this robot, and that is if I go in my reflection pass, I can actually put a glow on these brighter portions of the image. So let's do that. Once again, let me pull up my guy so you guys can see what the hell I'm doing. So this is our robot and a little bit of the girl. And I'm just going to put a glow effect. So this is a little too glowy. I mean, I'm exaggerating right now. But let's see what happens if we make it really, really subtle. So, I don't know if you can see. This is with the glow. No glow, glow, no glow. It's subtle, but it just kind of makes me feel like there's a little bit of haze in the air or dust even close to here. But I think it's still a little too harsh. Just lower it to 0.1. 0.1 might be a little too... Nah. I think that's all I really need. Alright, 0.2. Okay, so let's not get crazy. I think, as I said, we added a little bit, you know, tweak our incandescence, add a little bit of glow here. It's basically feeling pretty good. And I'm gonna go under my layer solid settings, and I'm gonna change this color to maybe something a little more indigo-ish, like that. A little darker. So what I'm gonna do to build the planet, and this is the reason why I chose to export my camera from from Houdini, is this plugin. It's a free plugin from Video Copilot. Once again, you're gonna hear me talk about Video Copilot incessantly because I think it's really awesome. So Video Copilot has this plugin that's called Orb, and it's free, 100% free, and it allows you to do spheres that then you can texture to look like planets. Okay, so I'm just going to create a solid. So now that I've created a solid, I'm going to go into my Video Copilot, and I'm going to use the VC Video Copilot Orb. Not all the Video Copilot plugins are free. Some of them you got to pay for, but the ones that are free are pretty awesome. So if I unsolo this, and right now we can see it against our image, but if I enable my camera, then the orb goes away. Why is that? The reason why it goes away is because the position in space of my orb is not proper, I guess. So let's make it so. First of all, I'm just going to zero out the position. So this is going to give me the origin. We're going to adjust this, but for the time being, this is a good starting point. And I just want to make the radius a lot larger. Maybe, yeah, I think we're going to go pretty big. 4,000. Woo, it's really big. Let's do 2,000 for right now, okay? And just to make our life easier, I'm just gonna get rid of, I'm just gonna, let's just focus on the planet right now. What we do need to do is put some texture so it looks like something. So let's do that. I have some like planetary textures that I think I downloaded a lot of them from NASA, I think gives, I don't know, if you Google it, just do a search for like planetary textures and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. What else? There's this guy, looks kind of crazy. Pluto, looks kind of cool. There's the rings of Saturn if I want them. Venus looks kind of fierce. Let's use Venus, especially because I also have like the bump map and the normal map. So here's what I'm gonna do, because I have like the surface, I have the normal map, and I have a bump map even. So I'm gonna bring all three of them, and I'll show you how we use them with orb. So basically, I'm just gonna drag my surface here, and it's like an 8K texture, which is kind of nice. I don't really need to see it. I'm just gonna call this diffuse. Okay, I'm gonna put it somewhere in our composition. I don't really care. So now when we go to our orb plugin, let me show you what happens. So we have a space here for maps, and we have a diffuse layer, and all I have to do is just kind of click on this guy and point it to my diffuse, and it will map it automatically around this sphere that orb has created. And I can do the same thing with my normal map. So I have a bump map too, but let's try the normal. So once again, here's my normal map. I don't need to see it. Just kind of call it normal. And I'm gonna go to orb, and we have a bump map layer, and I'm just gonna say that I want it to be this normal, like so. And but it's got a little checkbox here that says use normal map, because right now it thinks that I'm pointing to like a bump map, but it's really a normal map. So I'm just gonna click this guy, and it should make this little weirdness go away. But it's really reflective right now, and I don't really want that. So let's have we have a specular value. Let's make that 0.2. We have a glossy value. All right, the glossy kind of did the trick, but I think now I've gone a little too far. Yeah, not gonna worry about it too much. Just gonna make the glossy really small. Let's make it like that. I might need to put like a distant light in here just to kind of replicate. But mostly we just want this planet to live into the rest of our scene. So if I enable this right now, it's overwhelming everything. However, if I put it somewhere below our diffuse, now you kind of start seeing a little bit what we start getting. Let's try putting a light in our scene. I mean, basically our light is coming from this side, shining into the opposite side of the planet. I just kind of I want our planet to reflect that. So basically I'm doing a couple of things on the planet. I mean, first of all, I've adjusted my sunlight, so it's kind of like a little bit closer to roughly where we would expect it. With most of the light coming from this side and kind of illuminating that in the back. So the first thing I did is I added like a curve adjustment because I thought that this planet was a little too contrasty, a little too vivid. It doesn't really change, it doesn't really match the overall kind of look of our scene. So I added like some curves, and what I did in the curves, I basically decreased the contrast, and then just kind of pumped up in the shadows. I lifted the shadows here, and then under our red channel, I don't know if you can see it, but basically I just kind of lifted the reds in our shadows range, and what that's gonna do is like it kind of creates this kind of reddish sort of tint in the shadow part of the planet. The other thing that I did is I remembered that Orb, this plugin, has, if you go under the advanced option, has an edge feather, and basically if I take it off like the edge of the planet is really, really sharp, and it just kind of feels really fake. So I just kind of increased the edge feather to 0.1, and it just kind of like blurs out a little bit of the surface of the planet, like the edge, the silhouette of the planet a little bit. It just kind of makes it feel a little bit more distant. The other thing I did is I did adjust my UV maps to repeat. They were like 1 and 1. This is kind of like the way the map is coming in. And as I said, I'm using a map of Venus. If you go on Google, just kind of do a search for like Venus planet map, you'll find plenty, and they're free. I'm using it like an 8K version. If you can find 8K, that's awesome. But honestly, you don't really need that much resolution. However, I did want, I wasn't crazy about this. It just kind of feels a little too, I don't know. Aesthetically, I just don't like it. So I increased the UV repeats by 3 on the x-axis and by 2 on the y-axis, and it kind of gave me this, and it's got a little bit more resolution, and I don't know, it's kind of a little cooler. However, it's still too present. It's too present. It still feels like this planet is somehow sandwiched between our lower part of the atmosphere and the upper sky, and that just looks kind of wrong to me. And I was kind of messing around with the curves. I was trying to kind of figure out how do I get that look to make it feel like this planet is like a lot further away. And then I thought, sometimes just like the simplest things, and that's really, just remember this. Like sometimes, there's a way to overthink these things. So I just kind of like basically change my opacity, and if I change it to something like 60%, that's it. I mean, basically this is kind of all that I need to do. Like, I mean, I could go even lower if I want. I mean, that's like an aesthetic kind of thing. That's up to you. It depends a little bit like how much you want this atmosphere to kind of feel thick, and it's kind of creating this, this kind of density between us and the planet, or not. Maybe, just maybe, we start seeing like a little bit of stars in this portion of the sky here. Let me maybe make the space just a little more present. Okay, so once again, Google is your friend here, but I do have I mean, I have like some of these kind of star fields, but these are too much. I just want stars. Like if you Google, you can kind of find stuff like this, and it's free. All right, so this might do the trick. What else do we got? I think this guy. Nah. Let's go with this. It's just little dots, and I think that's all I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna bring the stars. Right now we got stars everywhere, and also this is probably like pretty large. I don't want to lose my resolution, so maybe like so. Oh, it looks crazy. I don't want it to set to normal mode. I just want it to set to maybe screen. So this is kind of cool. Here, I'm just gonna maybe rotate it a little bit, like so. And maybe come in from this side. Here's what I bet we could do though. We could duplicate it. I bet we could use it as a mask. So I'm just gonna put it in front of, disregard this right now. I'm gonna put our opacity to 100%. Just gonna disable this stuff. I really don't need it. We're just gonna use the planet as a mask for the stars, and because it contains an alpha. You see, it's got a built-in alpha. So I'm just gonna unmute it. We don't want to see it. We just want to use it for our stars. Here, let me show you what's going on here. So this is our stars, okay, our star field. So if I set our track matte to alpha matte, Now we're just going to see it on the planet, but we actually want the opposite. I want to see it everywhere except on the planet, so I'm just going to set this to alpha inverted matte. And now we have the perfect outline of the planet that the stars are not coming through, which is exactly what I want. So now I have the stars just beyond the planet. Okay, I think we're done in After Effects. We added our planet, we added the little stars, we have the sky with this kind of a little bit more interesting sort of gradient that goes from like the very, very low edge of the horizon, which is, you know, a little bit like in that kind of pinkish orangish kind of hue, and then gets like progressively more bluish as we get higher up into the atmosphere. So to me, this is kind of ready for the final stage, which is what I like to do, which is to bring this as an image into Resolve and do my final color tweak in Resolve. I usually do this on my calibrated monitor. I'm just going to export this. I'm going to go into Composition. I'm going to say Save Frame, because I really just, you know, it's just a frame anyway, it's just a still. I'm going to say Best Settings. TIFF Sequence is fine. I think TIFF is fine. I want it to be a floating point TIFF. It says RGB and alpha, but I really don't have an alpha, so I don't really care. That's about it. And I'm just going to save this on my desktop. And I'm just going to hit render. Okay, as a final step, this is not really necessary to do. I think what we exported out of After Effects was, for the most part, like 99.9% there, but I did want to take you guys through my entire process from beginning to end. And basically, this could be done in Photoshop. I happen to use Resolve because I really, well, first of all, because I do a lot of color grading, both for my own stuff and for other people, but also because I like, I find the Resolve tools sometimes to be a little bit more intuitive than even Photoshop, believe it or not. So what we have here is I just brought in like my 32-bit TIFF from After Effects that I exported in full resolution, and I just like did like a couple of like really simple things just to kind of make my image just the final sheen before I can call it done and send it off into the world. And if I hit bypass, you'll see that this is really subtle stuff that I'm doing. Like here's without anything, and this is with. I mean, hopefully you guys can kind of get like a rough sense. Here, can I go like full screen? Here we go. So bypass, and with my final tweaks. So all I did is I just kind of fine-tuned my contrast a little bit, like my shadows and my highlights, just a hair. I had like this little boogaboo from my render, but I didn't feel like redoing like a 2-hour render where I put like my fill light and it kind of illuminated my ground a little too much. So you can kind of see this is like the render the way it is, and I just kind of put like a little mask here and just kind of darken it a little bit. Not too much. I really don't want to go crazy with it. I just wanted to maybe just kind of take away some of that excessive brightness on the ground right below them. The other thing that I did is just put a vignette. This is basically just like a little bit of darkening around the edges of the frame. Once again, you can kind of see this is without anything and this is with. And then my final node was just a slight saturation where I pushed the midtones into the reds just a hair more, just to kind of give it a little more bite. And I took the highlights as well and just kind of pushed them just a little hair into like the pinkish reds. So as I said, I mean, you know, really subtle, but you know, especially if you look at the clouds here, they're just a little more saturated, just a little more red. I hope like the YouTube compression is going to be able to kind of keep up with this level of subtlety. All right, we made it to the end, almost the end, right? Like this is like the wrap up. It's been a long journey. It's taken way longer than I expected for something like this to take, but there's a lesson in there that sometimes creating these types of scenes can take a really long time, and I did want to show you guys part of the creative process, which sometimes involves thinking about stuff, sometimes involves trying things that might not necessarily pay off, and sometimes involves a lot of backtracking and so on and so forth. Before I leave you guys, however, I did want to do what I would call a post-mortem on this project, basically to kind of look back, and if I were to do things again from the beginning, what would I change? What would I do differently? Because I felt that there were some things that I could have done a little bit better. And if you've been watching this video and you made it all the way to the end and you haven't yet started this kind of project, maybe you can avoid some of the same mistakes. So I actually kind of wrote a bit of a list. So let me go down the list. This is not in any order of importance, but nonetheless, those are things that as I was working, I thought, oh, next time I will do it better. So one of the first things that I realized was that I should have used the right camera settings with the camera lens that I actually wanted from the very beginning, because I think that cost me some time, because if you remember, we started out with a wide angle 24mm lens, and then later in the process I decided that I really wanted more of a telephoto-y, more compressed type of image, so I switched to an 85mm lens, except then my scene didn't work anymore and I had to spend a great deal of time kind of rearranging all my geometry. Okay, the other thing that I would do differently is to use a smaller scale for my world. Now, if you're dealing with physics simulations, if you're dealing with things that have to behave according to a certain scale, then usually doing things to scale is a good idea. However, in this particular case, the scale was just simply too big. I mean, I think when all was said and done, the distance from where the camera was all the way to where the very, very final building was at the very, very end of my scene was something over 50 kilometers, which is really, really too large. On that note, I realized that for this particular scene, having such a large ground plane did not buy me anything, because beyond the immediate vicinity of that the camera was seeing, we couldn't really even tell where the ground ended anyway, right? I mean, we had our characters and we kind of had the detail in the foreground, but then that's about it. As a matter of fact, we did end up having a very, very large gap in between where my ground ends and where the buildings begin. And in retrospect, that ground plane could have been a lot smaller. I think I ended up overthinking the textures on the ground a lot, and in retrospect, I think I could have probably just gone with one single texture for the whole thing, and it would have been fine. As a matter of fact, I mean, right now I'm using two textures, but the dark texture is taking the displacement from the lighter sand. It really didn't make that much of a difference. I could have just kind of simplified that process and just used one material for my ground. I think I could have up-resed the clouds a little bit. I started out with very, very small VDB sizes. If you remember, I think it was 20 meters by 10 meters wide by a meter tall or something like that, which then when I brought into a scene this large ended up being, I had to basically kind of scale them back just to kind of make them sit with my layout. And, and in retrospect, I think, maybe the clouds could have been a little bit larger, a little bit more up to scale, and I could have probably up-resed them a little bit more, especially for a shot like this, which, as I said, is just a still. I'm not doing animation. I'm not going to be rendering tons of frames. I think I could have probably gone with a much more detailed cloud. Not that the cloud looked horrible, but I'm kind of missing a little bit of these kind of micro details that I think might have helped sell the scale a little bit more. I think that I should have done more work in progress renders instead of basically doing, I think, about 3 full res renders and then doing my final 2-hour render at the very, very end, the high res final render. I think that when you're working and you're looking at the IPR, chances are you're really not seeing all of the detail that you really need to be looking at. So maybe at the end of each day, I should have just kind of run like a, full res, like maybe not 4K, but like at least HD with like decent quality settings, even if it might have taken like 15 or 20 minutes, who cares? It's just, one shot. Last but not least, I shouldn't say last because there's probably like tons of other stuff that I'll think about that I should have done differently, but at least as part of like this list that I made for myself, I think what I should have done is also build my background sky in After Effects a little bit sooner before I committed to my final render. Once again, I could have done like a work in progress HD render with an alpha channel, brought that into After Effects and started working on my sky background, because I do think that that impacts all of my scene elements. And I think that if I would have known what my final background sky is going to look like, I might have been able to maybe just kind of change a few things, particularly like in the far distance. I think like I might have changed the, for instance, like the, I think like my fog was a little too thick, the low lane fog. I think I would probably like kind of make the density a little bit smaller. But anyway, I think those are things that I would do differently, that I would, that I think would improve the process. But, as I said, I'm sure I'll think of some more stuff, and I'm sure I'll make a lot more mistakes on the next project. So on that final note, thank you so much for making it this far. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked kind of, seeing the entire creative process from beginning to end, at least for me. Hopefully you learned a few things in the process. And let me know in the comments below if you want to see more of these, because I do have, like a lot of other different projects that I'm working on, and I would be happy to just kind of, do what I did for this video. So if you want to see more, and they're going to be like equally long videos, just let me know, and I will definitely, like if there's enough demand, I will make more of these. So on that note, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking it out this long, and I'll see you next time.